You are now listening to the I Think I Love My Wife podcast. And this is your best friend's best friend, Chidozie Okafor, ready to take you on another journey. Are you with me? Because I'm ready. Let's get it. In this episode, we talk about how to outserve your partner. We talk about why the perception of head of household is pretty much outdated. We discuss creating a space for your partner to find and have a voice in the relationship. We talk about navigating boundaries with friends and family. And we spend some time talking about the importance of managing the spaces and places you invest your energy. So we talked about a whole bunch of things as it pertains to how you guys got together, some of the things that you've learned through the process, the maturity of your relationship. I want to learn from you, what have you learned the most from your wife?
Well, I think that there are a few things that she's taught me, and we highlighted a bit of it early on when we talked about just that emotional vulnerability, and kind of being free to express the full range of my emotions with her. Right? I think that was something that I had to learn, and you know, it creates another level of intimacy. I think it is, it's important to just kind of break down that wall and be open with your partner if you really want to achieve that level of closeness.
How has she made you better? Whether it be as a person or as a partner?
I think I'm a lot more just cognizant of her needs, and you know that I don't know if it's anything explicitly that she's said. There were some things that kind of came up in counseling that we had to talk through. You know, she's talked about the acts of services that you know are her love language now, and so I think it's just made me much more aware of how I can serve her. You know, and just be like that. You talk a lot about servant leadership in corporate America, and so I think that can apply even as a husband when it comes to, you know, how you can best be there for your partner.
I get it, and you know, some of the reason why it sounds like I'm hesitating is you said a word that struck me that I don't think anyone so far has used this word, but I think it's super important, and I also heard it in premarital counseling. Is that, like you said, how can I better serve my wife? Yeah. And I don't think a lot of men speak to a relationship in terms of, like, we may say service, right? Yeah. I do this favor for her, but serve. And part of the premise that they talked about, and I firmly believe in, is like the goal should be like, how do I outserve this person? Like, how do I really continue to try to do the most? Like, I'm just there. And so, that made me want to inquire about, like, how do you guys think about service? Sure. Is it along those same lines? What do you think about that kind of phrase of, it's about how do you outserve your partner? Yeah. And then on top of that, how does that, I guess you mentioned a little bit about, like, for example, the trip to Houston, but on more day to day, how does that show up in practice? And I would say, go there and I'll interrupt you later.
Sure. Yeah. I think for me, how it shows up, I mean, particularly right now, and what we have going on, it's just trying to find ways to take more off of her plate. Right. She does a lot of the meal situation with, both us and our daughter. And so if there's something I can do to kind of help make that process easier, whether that's little stuff like loading and unloading the dishwasher, if it's making sure, that the bibs are clean for our daughter, if it's, just any little thing I can think of that normally she would take care of. And I know she has a lot going on. I have a lot going on, but if I can take a moment to just try to lighten the load for her, I'll try to do that.
Would you say that she does a lot when it comes to, like, meal prep? And I'm sure there's a ton of things that she does a lot in terms of y'all's relationship. And I'm curious to understand where some of those areas or aspects, things that she started doing proactively, or the things that you guys are talking about, say, hey, when we think about the things that need to be done, let's, like, figure out who's doing what, or the things that she just naturally aligned to.
No, we had a conversation. I mean, during that 6 months of things not going well early on in our marriage, we tried to, like, sit down and write out all of the different things that need to get done in the household and who should kind of take care of them. Now, we weren't really successful fully, and it's a lot of it was me, if I'm being frank about it, and kind of making sure all those things were taken care of early on. But we found ways to try to still hold each other accountable, and in some cases we outsourced some of that work. We got a housekeeper, a couple times a month to come in, take care of some of those things. So, yeah.
And part of why I asked, because I think it's important to talk about, like, how do you feel as it pertains to the term head of household?
Yeah.
And where do you feel your role is in relation to what that means to you?
Yeah. So I think how I think about the term head of household, it's, I don't know. It in some ways I feel like it might be outdated. I think looking at my parents' relationship, my dad very much served that role. And he was the one that worked. He was the one that took care of paying all the bills. He was the one that was doing pretty much all the manual labor around the house. He set the direction on what we were planning to do. And maybe there's still some elements of that exists now. But I think one of the things I had to think through is in, the 21st century, what does marriage look like that in terms of, two working people, two professional people, versus where it was my dad working, my mom staying at home. And so, like, how does that influence what I'm looking for in a wife, right? So I'm kind of dovetailing away from the question a little bit, but I think there is still direction needed from a man. That's what the Bible has called men to do in terms of being a leader of your house. But I think that a lot of the things that fell under head of household are slowly becoming outdated in a lot of ways.
And like what? Like, what's outdated?
My dad being the sole income provider, right? Like, that was
true. Maybe, yeah. I mean,
right.
Y'all got more money now, but like, what else? In the sense of like what? And when I say what else, I mean like in the sense of what people are doing, or decisions that are being made.
Yeah, I mean, I think my dad was like the primary decision maker, right? Whereas now it is more of getting more input from my wife than probably my mom provided to my father, right? So I think that there's just a shifting in some of that responsibility of, being.
This may come from like left field. Do you ever think your mom didn't care about some of those decisions?
I don't think she was like clamoring to be included. No, so I don't think she cared.
And I wonder that, because I think in some cases we say, oh, that person's making most of the money, so they made the decisions. And I also think there's value in like not having to care about certain things.
I agree.
And both my parents worked, but I think it followed a similar model that my dad made a lot of decisions.
Yeah.
I think they talked about certain things.
Yeah.
But I also know my mom is like certain things. She's like, I just don't want to have to deal with it.
No,
I trust, and it probably goes to trust.
Yeah, for sure.
I trust you enough to take care of it. You know me.
Yeah.
And if you're not sure, we can talk about it. That's very different from saying what I say goes, right?
Absolutely. Let me be clear about that then, because I think it may sound like my dad was like a dictator. He very much respected my mom's opinion and wanted her, her input in certain places. But I think he fulfilled that traditional, male role model. Like, he was imitating his father, right? And who also had
more archaic than the next one.
Exactly, right? So we're moving slower and slower away from what that looked like for my grandfather and great grandfather, right? As each generation goes.
Yep.
And so I think that term is evolving, if you will.
So how has it evolved for this household?
Yeah, for this household, I mean, I would still say that like a lot of the decisions that are being made, they're going to have a heavy influence from me as like the quote unquote head of the household. But I think I view it more of like a pilot, co-pilot, as opposed to like a clear head. Like I'm right there. She's right there in the cockpit with me, right? Like I'm definitely getting her input on the majority of things. Even if it's a passing question, like, hey, I'm thinking about doing this. You good with that? Kind of thing. I think it's evolving.
Do you feel like in your role as the leader, right?
Yeah.
Or the pilot, I would say. How does your wife find her voice? In the 5 years you've been together, has that been at any point a struggle for her to find that? So, and how do you create a space for that?
So I think that's what I was alluding to, and I think you phrased it really well there. When I was talking about, you asked what's changed. I think that's part of the maturation process that I was talking about, and she has been able to really establish her own identity and find that voice. And I think there have been struggles, like where I've been, maybe not as receptive as I should have been in the past, receiving certain mainly criticisms, right? Like if there's certain things that's coming at me that are negative from her, and me not being the most open and having to figure out how best to receive that and create the space for her to be able to kind of tell me those things. So that's been a process. That's part of that came up in our counseling sessions. Part of that's just us talking, after disagreements to make sure we're keeping each other accountable to making that happen. So,
yeah, man, that's fair. And so we talked about a bit of when you are living long distance or dating long distance.
Yeah.
You primarily focus on each other in the moments that you guys have in front of each other.
Yeah.
And those experiences. How do you guys, or how have you guys figured out how to balance the, business of the relationship with like the romance and fun of it? And is there one aspect that's more important than the other?
It's tough. It gets tougher when you have kids. I think it's even worse now, right? With not being able to go anywhere. But we were pretty good about having a date night. We have a troop of babysitters that we can, and even that takes a lot of trust to like find someone, that you can screen and feel comfortable leaving your kid with them. And so we've kind of made that an important part of our relationship, that we, spend time just one-on-one. We travel a lot together. We try to take trips. We right before the pandemic, we were able to go somewhere for her birthday, and left our daughter with her parents. So we just try to make it one-on-one time, having fun. Those elements of when we were dating long distance and having kind of mini vacations every weekend, we try to incorporate some of those whenever we can into our marriage. Cool.
No, I think that's important. And you said something that reminded me of something I mentioned earlier on that I wanted to get back to is you were like, I guess the trip that you guys went to before her birthday, she stayed with her parents.
Yeah.
Your daughter stayed with her parents.
Yeah.
So one of the things that have come up in the first seasons that all the women have come from two-parent households. And so recognizing that your wife came from one that divorce happened pretty early in her life.
Yeah.
There was a stepfather that kind of played, I would assume, played the father figure in some ways to her.
It was later, actually.
Much later in her life.
In college,
So she was pretty much like single.
Yeah.
I mean, child with single parent for a long period of time.
Yeah.
In what ways do you think that's impacted how she views relationship and things that may have come up as like challenges in your relationship?
I think that there is, so there weren't anything like, there's this daddy issue phrase that kind of comes up sometimes. I didn't, get any sense of that sort of situation with her. I mean, her father has been around. It's not like he wasn't available to her.
Her parents just weren't together.
Yeah, they just weren't together. So there was nothing like that. And my dad actually said something to me. He was like, when you're looking for a woman, this was very early on. I was probably like a teenager. He was like, try to find a woman whose parents stay together because she'll have a better idea of like what marriage looks like. So I kind of had that in my head, but then like didn't see any signs that it would be an issue with her. Mm-hmm. So I kind of like dismissed it. And fortunately, we haven't had any issues like that have come up from it. I think the main thing, I think, is her being an only child and kind of having this really tight bond with her mom. There was some kind of friction, just like navigating that, right? It's like, okay, who's this dude coming into the picture,
breaking this up?
Exactly. Yeah. So that was probably
probably on her mom's side too. Like, you're not taking my business because even I would imagine her mom's like married now, but for her mom, I would think that is a very much core relationship for her. That's now sounds strong, but being diminished in a little bit because she has to focus a lot of attention on her husband and not her children, and so she can't give me the same amount of time or be as available for me as she was because she got other things to worry about. And so how was that navigating that? Because I think being an only child and learning how to share, learning how to compromise. Were those things that came up, or how did you guys navigate through those type of?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's been a work in progress. We've been, talking through how best to create boundaries.
Good word.
Yeah. Counseling word, right? Counseling word. So counseling word, boundaries there. And I think we've been doing a good job with that. In terms of the only child versus having siblings thing, it's actually what's interesting is I think I actually have more issues because I'm used to growing up in a house with siblings. You kind of stake your claim on certain things. Like, this is mine. Like, you know what I mean? Like,
that's different.
You know what I mean? Right. So it's like, maybe there may have been like a mug that I always drank out of when I was growing up.
Why you drinking out my cup?
Exactly, right? Exactly. So like now it's like, why is she drinking out my cup? Like, you know,
this cups we bought.
Yeah. So it's different because as only child, everything was hers. Like, it was like, this is all my stuff. Like, there's nobody else.
Probably what you're thinking. This is all my stuff.
Exactly, right? So I'm very much like, yo, like stay to your side over there on the countertop. Like, this is the line right here. Like,
interesting. Yeah, I wouldn't have thought of that.
Right. So. That's been some issues where I'm like, hey, like, this is my side of the sink. This is your side. Keep your, like.
Yeah. How, you said something about boundaries, and I think typically when people hear that word, it's relative to you and the person you're dealing with. Like, I need to create boundaries as it pertains to this.
Yeah.
Whether it's protecting yourself or what have you. I also think it's important, and it comes up, maybe not as much so far in the conversation I've had with men. But I think it's things that men are dealing with, and it probably happens on both sides. Yeah. How do you, what are some of the important boundaries to have as it pertains to like your relationship and family? Yeah. And how do you have those conversations to determine those things or align on those things, especially when there are some very like tight relationships that are there, that exist?
I mean, it's really like, how much should family be in your business, right? Like, and you have to kind of have that conversation with, okay, what types of things are we comfortable sharing with who, and what does that look like, in terms of details? Like, how far are we going to go into certain things? Do I, when we were buying our house, right? It's like, do we want family involved in that decision making process, or is this something that you and I are talking through, right? And obviously, our families both have purchased homes, so there's an opportunity.
Knowledge share. That can happen.
But do we really want them to get into the nitty gritty and kind of be inserting their opinion into what's going on? We're naming our daughter, right? Do we want to share that with our parents? Do we want their input? Do we want to just surprise them? We ended up not telling them what the name was going to be and waiting because there could be some issues there. Some people may be pushing for family names to be, as part of the consideration set. So those are kind of smaller things, I'd say, but making sure you're aligning on who's in your business and how much.
So those things sound like things that kind of the day-to-day stuff that come up that you got to figure out. But I think people tend to think about this also in terms of conflict. Mm-hmm. And so how did you guys navigate that? Or it's less about the how. I think all the things you guys hopefully have, firm environments to communicate and share. But like, what were some things that you guys realized worked for you all?
Things that we realized work for us on creating boundaries around.
Yeah, the type of boundaries, whether it's I'm more asking around those boundaries related to like conflict resolution or when there's conflict in the relationship.
Gotcha.
But you can expand it to some of the things you mentioned before. What were some of the things that you feel like realized worked for y'all, and what we're gonna you mentioned like the kid's name, you mentioned and you said the example, we decided not to share it. Yeah. But you mentioned like the house, you mentioned other things. What were the decisions? Like, what did you guys align on in some of those things?
Yeah, I think in some cases we were like, let's keep it. This is gonna be me and you. Like, we're just gonna keep the information.
What were those cases? I'm pushing you.
I mean, so the house. I already mentioned the house. I mentioned my daughter. I think deciding on where we were gonna live. Right. That was one of the first decisions we made.
Like Dallas
versus Chicago. Gotcha. Right. We like, look, this is me and you making this call. We don't need any outside influences. Yeah. We're gonna be a unit on this. And so. I think in most cases we default to just keeping it in-house, right? Very rarely have we decided.
What about conflict? Because to the same point about you said about for buying a house, they bought a house, knowledge share. Yeah. Conflict, there's some things you probably could learn from someone that's been there. Like, is there boundaries you guys have around when we're dealing with each other? Things that relate to each other, how much we share or don't share? To get advice or not get advice or vent or
I don't think we've ever explicitly said. I would say there's probably only a couple of people she's ever probably talked to, like her like two best friends, if it was something that was like a big deal that we needed to talk to. And probably the same thing on my side, like, hey, I got this going on. Like, what would you do in this situation? And those moments have been rare. Probably count on one hand in the 5 years that we've been married where like there was something really big that needed to get some outside opinions on.
Okay. So one of my favorite parts is our round robin.
Yeah.
Part where we go through and ask a few questions.
Okay.
And one more of like your short, short as comprehensive of an answer as you can give, and I'll cut you off if I need to.
Okay.
And what we'll do is on some of the more interesting ones, we'll give the opportunity to go a little bit deeper and talk about, so don't feel like we won't get to do it. And so, do you think it's necessary for your wife to be your best friend?
No.
Is your wife your best friend?
Yes.
When you guys were dating, how many dates did you go on before you had the expectation for her to pay for it?
This is an interesting question. So the first time we dated, I was working and was consulting. She was a student. So I had
dynamic. Yeah,
so I had
good money.
I had no expectation for her. I was like, I got this. It's cool. Like, you know what I mean? Yeah. So I pretty much,
you just kind of knew what it was.
Yeah, exactly.
And that was more of a dynamic situation.
Yeah, exactly.
In reality, what happened? Like, how many days do you think back? Like before she like took the initiative to plan or pay or.
So she planned dates that, you know, had lower costs, right? But like I never asked her to pay for anything because I knew what it was.
You didn't have to ask, but did she do it? Like, you don't have to ask.
No, she did. Okay. No, she did.
Okay,
yeah.
But it was more given to your environment.
Yeah. That was the dynamic. Hold on. Let me talk about the second time around because second time,
she had a job. Different story. Second time around. Yeah.
Second time around. There were definitely opportunities for her, and she you know would pay for dates just because she knew like, hey, my budget's a little bit tighter than it was previously.
Yeah.
So
okay, that's fair.
Yeah.
From a priority standpoint,
yeah.
And thinking about love, is it wife over children or children over wife?
I think I'd always say I used to say wife over children. I don't know where I stand on it right now. I'm kind of like torn, but I'll stick with my original wife over children then, just for the purposes. Was
your wedding worth it financially?
Yes.
Ballpark, how much you guys spend on your wedding?
That's like 35.
Okay.
Yeah.
Reasonable. If you had a certain set amount of money, deciding between getting a big ring or having a big wedding, what would you pick?
Well, I know she probably picked the big ring, but I would go with the big wedding.
Okay. You guys do joint accounts or separate accounts?
Joint.
All of y'all accounts are joints?
So we have a system where basically we have a set amount that goes into individual account for each of us, but everything else goes into the main pot. So it's like,
so you got an allowance, basically.
Yeah.
We'll talk about that later. I love that word. Do you feel like you're friends or like a fan of your in-laws?
Wait, say that one more time.
Are you a friend? Like,
am I a friend?
Like, in terms of like in-laws come, are we cool with it? Are you a fan of them? Or are you like, I'm trying to like, damn, they're gonna be here for like 2 weeks. Shit.
I mean, they live up the road, so yeah, I see them.
I don't want to cause no problem.
Yeah. So I would say we get along well. I don't think we have a very deep relationship. It's very it's pretty surface level.
Got it.
Yeah.
True or false? Guys mature later than women.
True.
Oof, okay. So frequency of sex, and there's three levels to this. The categories that you can pick from, in terms of preference or whatever, is all the time, weekly, monthly, every now and then. And so when you guys were dating, we can pick whatever phase of dating you wanted. What was your preference?
Preference was all the time.
Has your preference changed?
No.
Okay. I want to ask you the same question 3 times and it's like the same. Okay. What was the reality when you guys were dating?
It was pretty frequent. Yeah, like all the time. I mean, we were seeing each other on weekends, right?
Yeah,
so like it was like
touche.
Right? Like so yeah.
When we saw each other, we knew what it was. In marriage, what was it?
It's probably what was it? What was
like
between
all
weekly,
the time, weekly, monthly? Or
it's like it's between weekly and monthly. So you know, it's kind of in between there.
Now that you guys have kids,
It's still the same.
Okay, it hasn't changed that much. It's not myself. We'll get to that too.
Okay.
So all these questions now are on a 1 to 10 scale.
Okay.
And I hope you're as honest as you can be about these
All right,
questions.
I got you.
How happy are you in your marriage overall? On 1 to 10 scale.
So today, right?
Today,
I'm like 9. I'm at a 9. I'm good.
Okay. No. Overall, when you look at the whole picture.
The whole picture will be 9. So I stick with a 9.
And currently, you just said you're a 9 as well. Okay. How much of romance is currently in your marriage? On a 1 to 10 scale.
I'd probably put it at like a 7.
7?
Yeah.
Even though you're not going on dates as much as y'all used to, there's still romance happening?
There's still some romance happening.
Okay.
There's still some romance happening.
How much of your marriage is focused on a day-to-day stuff? Well, I need to change my questions. I just figured out how to get to the real answer. I'm going to do it later. Yeah.
How much of my marriage is focused on the day-to-day stuff? Scale of 1 to 10. I'd say it's like 5.
5.
Yeah.
And then how much of it is focused on your kids? Or your child right now?
Yeah, quite a bit. Probably 7.
Okay. And then how much of it is on your or your wife's career, like professional side of it?
Yeah, I might have to go back on that romance question and recalibrate. Recalibrate. Like, she's working a lot right now, man. You're right. So I'd say there's quite a bit of focus on her career right now. So I'd probably say 7 or 8.
Okay, so I'm finishing and we'll come back. How much alone time do you feel like you get with your wife?
Well, right now, being in the house all day, not much at all. I probably get just a shower by myself.
Or let's say like the Corona quarantine. How much time were you getting?
I would say a good like 2 hours a week. You know, just like by myself.
And who runs the show? You or her?
Man, I'm a lean with me, but it's pretty close.
Okay. What would you say your wife's greatest attribute is?
I think I mentioned it before, her versatility, just her range. And so, yeah, she can do a lot of things really well.
Okay. And I think I know your answer because we talked about it a little bit, but what's more important to you, to be respected or to be loved?
I respect it.
Okay. So let's go back to some of these because, the ones if there's something you want to go back to, we can. Yeah. But the ones I wanted to go back to is you said that, so the accounts. So basically, you guys have allowances. So I'm assuming, you correct me if I'm wrong, you guys looked at, hey, we both bring in X amount lump sum.
Yep.
We got these bills.
Yep.
We got these things that are important to us or you or me.
Yeah.
This is what we got left.
Yep.
This is what we're trying to save.
Yep.
Here's what we have left. Break down percentages of allowance.
Basically,
right? Okay, cool. Because a lot of people hear the word allowance, and I've been saying this since I was like 19 years old. Like, my wife's going to get allowance. I'm going to get allowance too. Her child going to be bigger than mine. I'm not getting no allowance. And it's like, it is very sensible, like financially, like, hey, you look at what you got. Yeah. And I've seen people do different ways of accounting. Yeah. And I'm like, at the end of the day, if something goes wrong, you're going to pull from those other accounts. So why don't you just put it together?
So I'm in brand management, right? You got to brand it right. Yeah. It's not an allowance. It's a personal funds. Man, it's your personal funds.
I need people to know what it is.
It's how much personal funds.
It is how much our collective budgets allow us to have each week.
You are free to do whatever you want with your personal fund.
I get it. It's the amount you're not checking for. No,
exactly.
So in that, quick question. This is probably the more important question that people think about. When it comes to gifts, where does that money come from? Is it like a joint account or is it your personal?
So
how do y'all?
So you took accounting, right? You know, you're in business school. I got a spreadsheet that has, I got an income statement. I got a balance sheet. There's a gift line item in there. And
for like in your joint account or for
the joint account. Okay, joint account. This is part of the joint account. This is, you do what you want with your personal money.
Okay, so that doesn't get touched.
Yeah, do whatever you want with
that. Is the gift budget line, the line item, do like you have one and she has one, or is it?
It is by month. Like my birthday's coming up in May.
So you guys reevaluate each month.
Oh yeah. It's all laid out.
The following month,
it's all laid out.
It's reallocated somewhere else.
Yeah.
So then, is yours higher than hers? Or
same? Same.
Equal. Listen, some people be like, I got.
It's the same.
Gucci bags cost more than Apple Watches.
It's the same.
Okay. Do you feel like
now?
Do you feel pressure to like exhaust it?
Yeah. I sometimes I have to put a little bit of my personal on top of it.
Okay. Just to it's a reasonable budget.
I give myself a little wiggle room.
What they say is a starting off point.
Exactly.
I got it.
I need to add a little romance on top of the gift.
Fair. It's like this could cover part of it. Got it. Okay, cool. What you about to say?
No, that's
So you talk about the in-laws, and so you say we're surface level. Yeah. And I always wonder because I know there's some people that they just get along with the in-laws, and it is just like extension of their own parents, to some degree, if they get along with their parents, right? Like that. Yeah. And then some people, it's like, we cool, we amicable, we see each other, it's love, but like I'm not like checking in, to see them and stuff like that. And if we got to. Yeah. And some people, they just don't get along. Yeah. And so I think you're kind of in the middle.
Yeah. So I think there's a different dynamic. My in-laws are kind of private people. They're like, things are kind of, they keep things close to the chest. Yeah. And so they're just not very welcoming and open to if you're not like day one. And so
5 years later, you're still working towards it.
yeah. No, seriously.
Put me in the team, coach.
It's a slow burn. It's a slow burn with them. And my parents are the opposite, right? Like they immediately welcome, my wife in and like she feels, that immediate warmth, right? And so it's been a little bit of a struggle. This is the most difficult relationship I've had with the parents of a woman I was dating, now married to, right? Like other parents of a woman I was dating were like, oh,
come on,
love this guy.
We're trying to find a good dude for her,
right? And so that's been a challenge, but I think it's something that we're working on.
So it seems to me, correct me if I'm wrong.
Yeah,
they're like you're at a point where you recognize it's not personal. This is who they are. Yeah, it's not about you per se. This is how they operate.
Yeah, and I think before I did take it personally.
And so how do you figure that out? Is it time that helped you realize it's not just me?
It's definitely time.
Okay,
it's definitely time.
And then on the other end, which was going to be a question, it also seems like you realize. It seems to me that it's not something you're content with. Like you want more, and it's like how do we get there? But I would assume that it's something that you realize is going to continue to take more time.
Yeah,
it's not like a specific. There's not a silver bullet for it.
It's not a silver bullet.
More time, maybe 15-year anniversary. Y'all like.
Finally cool,
Yeah, good. All right. Why do you think guys mature later than women?
I think I'm mature later than most women my age. I just kind of.
In what way though? In what way? Because y'all both probably started working at the same time. You didn't get fired. You weren't like a bad employee. You was mature enough to hold a job.
Yeah, I just think my mindset was still on fun, having a good time. Like,
does that make you immature though?
I would say those are
your priorities were different.
I would say those are characteristics of younger people though.
What?
That mindset of just like chasing fun and not necessarily being. What is maturity then? Maturity is about like reaching a point to where you feel like you are more older in your mindset, more like ready for the traditional things of settling down. But to
say that women mature or guys mature later than women, is to say that there are things that we put a value on the things that women act more responsibly towards than men do at certain ages, as if those things are like higher value things, right?
I would say society places a higher value on those things.
Doesn't mean it's right. We could talk about hopeless things society places value on that we would reassess.
Fair, but I think it's a natural progression of people aging to where you get to a point where those things matter less. When I say those things, I'm talking about like fun and just like kicking it and whatever that like I was focused on in my younger days that now I'm not. So that to me is a maturation process of getting here. And so I think that happened. That curve happens.
So
happens sooner.
It is less about like absolute maturity, but you're speaking along a curve of if this is the continuum that people take on what they want to do and don't want to do. If we believe that those things are consistent,
because you would say
women get across that curve sooner than later.
I think that the curve
sooner than guys do.
Yeah, I think we do the XY axis and we plot it out. That steepness of the curve is different than for men versus women.
I hear you. I just think that a lot of times those where the steepness occurs is more on like relationship and like settling down, and things like that. And I don't know that like the steepness of the curve means that was the right curvature to have. And I give you an example.
We can debate if it's right or wrong, but you're asking about maturity.
True, but to say that that's the curve that we have to be on, right? Like that's the trajectory we have to have. Is like, okay, because they got there sooner, they're more mature than us. But like, was getting there sooner earlier the right thing to do?
I don't know, but the question is maturity. They're more mature than us at that point.
Interesting, because I used to talk to this woman.
Yeah,
in undergrad, and not saying undergrad is a curve that you sorry.
Yeah, and I get you.
And like she wanted to be in a relationship, and I wasn't trying to do that in college. And so someone can say, "Chidozie, you're not mature." Yeah, like she knows what she wants. She knows where the curve is going. Yeah, she's ready to get there. And she like really wanted to be in a relationship, and we, for whatever reasons, I was like, "Nah, I'm not trying to do it." Yeah. Fast forward, we're both out of college. We just happened. She was living in a certain state. I happened consulting. I happened to be in that same state. We connect. We just like go to dinner, just like on something like let's just kick it, catch up. And she like I think through reflection was like, I don't know why I really wanted to be in a relationship so bad when I was in college. Like that was her like reflection. Yeah. She's like, I don't know why I really wanted that so bad. Okay. Like, why was that important to me so much? And like, to me, it was almost a function of like, Charles, you were right. We didn't need to be in a relationship back then because we weren't ready.
So you're saying she was being immature by wanting a relationship?
I'm not saying that she was being immature. I just think what she valued was different from mine. And I don't think what we value is indicators for maturity. Like I didn't like, to me, being in a relationship in that period of my life wasn't important. It was about, like you said, when you chose to end the relationship that first time, you had other things that were more important to you. I don't think you were being less mature in that moment of your life because you said, hey, my career and the avenues or enablers to get there is more important to me than sustaining a relationship. Mm-hmm. I don't think that makes you less mature. But someone else will look at a woman and says, no, I want to stay in a relationship and try to make it work because that's more important to me now. And they're like, oh, she's more mature. And I'm like, is that she's more mature? She's just her value propositions for things are different. Okay. That's where I look at it. And I don't know if there's a right or wrong, but I look at it from we just value different things at different points of our lives. And I don't know if those are indicators for maturity. Like if you're handling business, I even think you are more mature for acknowledging the differences. Gotcha. Where someone would have said, you using the curve, you were immature because you didn't value the relationship.
Is it thoughtful or is it mature though?
I think it's maturity. I think if you were handling your business, in the things that matter to you, you're mature. To me, like I think if the things that matter to you are important to you and you're handling them appropriately, you're mature. I think like if you're like, I really want to work and make this money, and you're like messing that up, you're immature. Like you can't even like do that right. If you don't value something and you're not acting appropriately, like it correlates. Like you didn't care how it ended up. You didn't care about the consequences, so you didn't put the work into it or whatever.
I mean, I think it's an interesting conversation. I think, do we place a value on maturity, too much value on maturity, right? Is it, because to your point, right, if you're just valuing things differently, you're not necessarily associating what you want out of life at that time with being necessarily mature, then does that really matter? You know what I mean? Like, so I don't know. I think it's almost like decoupling what maturity means in the traditional sense.
And I get it, and I just like to challenge people in that, because I think the way that we talk about things and think about things is important. And I think it's a good point. You said decoupling. I was just talking to someone today about, I posted something on Instagram talking about how I think Ben and Jerry's did like some posts. They've been on it.
Yeah, they've been on it, for sure.
This like social justice or racial justice. And they posted like ice cream scoops, and like the handle was like police budget. And there's like scoops going to like education, housing, yada, yada, yada. They talked about defunding police. And I was like, I don't know if I'm on this. I support the sentiment and the symbolism, but I don't know if I'm on the whole like defunding the police train yet. I was like, I support, reassessing how we allocate funds to go to places that are more impactful. Sure. And a lot of people are like, yeah, it's the same thing. And I'm like, no, a lot of the conversation now when people talk about defunding the police is dismantling the police and all that. And I want to be clear about where I fall on that part of it.
For sure. I think
it's important to, like, when we talk about maturity, the point is it's such a loaded term. Absolutely. That it's important for us to decouple what we mean by when we say it, because now we just throw like, this guy's not mature. Yeah. And it's like, no, guys are mature. Yeah. You might not be important to them. Yeah. In terms of what's going on in your life.
So sound decision making does not equal maturity. I think that's.
You don't think so? I think it does.
So well, what definition are we talking about? So are we talking about, if you think of maturity like a fruit that's ripening, right? Getting to your final stage of like being a husband, father, et cetera, if that's what maturity is, then women get there faster than men.
True. If all that's to say, if all life is predicated on like that, like yes. But I don't know that I would say all life is predicated on that. Like you are more than your relationship with your wife. Yeah. Right.
I agree.
And so I hear you there.
Yeah. But that's what we tend to think of when we hear that term. So that's where I'm going with it.
And that's my point. Yeah. And hit it right on the nail. Okay. That is what makes that conversation loaded, because we think about it in that terms. I'm like, no, it is more than that. Yeah. It goes beyond that.
So when I said sound decision making doesn't mean mature, I mean in that traditional sense. So what you're saying is men are making sound decisions, and that demonstrates maturity in your mind. Yeah. And so it's equal for both sexes in terms of the rate of maturity. And I think that's fair.
Yeah, that's fair. Cool. I think that's the first time I've gotten to someone's response. I was like, it wasn't like agree to disagree. It's like, no, I agree with what you're saying. We're seeing it in a similar light, and I think, and I haven't been able to like explain it well, but I think the point you're saying, like when we talk about generally is in terms of relationship and where we want to go with that.
Yeah.
And I'm like, no, like I'm looking at maturity in absolute terms, not as it pertains to a relationship.
For sure.
And so you gave me these 1 to 10 answers.
Yeah, man. I think I'm
on a whole bunch of them.
I need to.
And the thing, just think adds up to like 17 or 25.
Yeah. Got to recalibrate.
Now you forced me to ask a better question.
Okay,
I use it. I always tell people at this age, if you're not getting the answers you want, you're not asking the right questions. Like,
gotcha. Okay.
You should be better. So I take the L on that.
All right.
So my better question is, on a 100% scale, how do you force rank percentage wise?
Force rank,
romance.
Yep.
Where it is, not what you want.
Yeah, no, I got you.
Where romance, your child, day to day,
okay,
and your career. 4 things.
Okay.
No, and I add you and yourself. 5 things.
Okay. So
what does that look like?
I'm gonna throw my daughter in somewhere around 40%.
Okay.
I will throw my wife's career probably at around. Well, I still got day to day.
Can I switch that up?
Yeah.
Because I feel like
day to day and career kind of go together.
No, they don't.
Okay.
But
talk to me about it.
But we can talk about it. Someone's gonna, slice me up. So let me rephrase it.
Okay.
Your child. Or children.
Yep.
Romance.
Yep.
And I don't want to make romance seem like that is like solely your wife, because I think that's like a kind of can be like implicit in there, just like the romance of like not the business part of it.
Yeah.
The day to day, like the business of relationship, your career, your wife, and all the things that she needs.
Yep.
And then yourself. And the reason why I frame it those ways, because I think as I talk to men that are married, these are the different pools. That they have on their mental capacity.
Yeah. Okay.
And so when you got to remember to be romantic. You got to remember like she got her own needs, and we got our careers. So we think about those 6 things to get our numbers right. Where are you being pulled right now, percentage wise, on those things?
So I'm being pulled a lot toward my daughter right now because she's not in daycare.
We say still 40%.
Yeah.
Well, we can say pre. I think this is like a different time.
Okay. That's what I'm giving you. That's what I'm giving you. I'm giving you post numbers. That's what I'm saying.
Pre-COVID and being stuck at home. Like that's hopefully our normal.
Yes.
And it will be the normal when people can go back outside. Where would you say you were at?
Okay. So across,
I'll do the math while you say the numbers.
I think across those, I think there's actually a pretty good split across those. Right.
Okay.
We had some really good, romance. There was intentional date nights. There were, we frequently used our babysitters. So I would give that a good solid percentage. I would, I'm trying to think of where what's unequal of those buckets. Right now, I'm feeling like they were all pretty.
Cause you're saying they're all like at 16.5%.
Yeah, I think they were all probably pretty equal. I'm trying to think of if one of them was out of whack.
Man, you hit me. As you think about it, you hitting me.
Yeah.
So, I think this is like a natural disposition.
Yeah.
And I'm not married, so I could be wrong.
Yeah.
You like. And I said, I think I think what you're saying is that they're all like around 16.5.
Yeah.
It's like a 33%.
Yeah.
Yeah. For 2. Yeah. And you're like, I don't think any of them are out of whack. It's probably around that.
Yeah.
Should any of those be out of whack? Like, should any of those be weighted more than the other? Like, if you were creating the ideal scenario of where your time should be focused, should they all be equal, or should some be weighted more?
So I think I spoke to this a little bit earlier, and how COVID has given me the opportunity to spend a lot more time with my daughter. Mm-hmm. I think there was a reliance on our daycare to do a lot of the day-to-day teaching. I mean, basically she was spending just as much time with them, if not more, with them versus us. And so I could make an argument that should be greater, but it's kind of just a function of the 5-day, 40-hour, work week where she just, has to be away from us. So I've enjoyed the fact that my daughter has been, a much bigger portion of my mental capacity. I have not enjoyed as much. My wife's job has gotten a lot more demanding, and so there's a lot more, and how that kind of blends in with everyday life. It's like, well, she's so busy with her career, I need to pick up the slack with the everyday thing. So you can kind of debate which one falls, in that category. No, and I don't know.
Again, these type of questions, it goes back to the point where it works for you and your partner. I don't know if there's a right or wrong. Yeah. And it stems from the fact that, and maybe we answer this question too. someone at my old job when I was doing consulting asked me the question of like, if you think about the 5 things that are important to you, like, you know, how would you rank them? And I think we all aligned on the fact that there, you know, your career, your job, your family, you. I think it was like your friends, you know, it was your job, your career, yourself. No, those are the same thing. It was like your job, spiritually, your spiritual aspects of yourself. So your job, your spirituality, yourself, you know, your job, your spiritual aspect of you, your religion, just yourself, your family, and there's like a 5th one that you could like put whatever you want there. There's 5 things, and they're like, how would you say your time is allocated? Now, and how should it be?
Gotcha.
And I was telling the girl like, you know, and I was like, I don't know the exact answer to that, but I know work would be like less than 10%.
Yeah.
And she was like, how could work be? And I was like, well, I know myself, my spirituality, my religion, and my family are greater than these other things. Yeah. And so they're going to be greater than 20%. And so that's an easy question to be like, oh, well, it comes to like work. Yeah. She's one of the people that like love, like her job defines her. Yeah. And so it was tough for her. Yeah. And so I said to say like, I don't think there's a right or wrong answer, but I wonder if everything is supposed to be equal. Or the thing, and it's probably dynamic. It probably shifts as things happen. But I wonder if
there's days when work is more important, and I have to put more pour my energy into that. But like,
I just want to, you know, I think I'm pushing it because I think sometimes we come at life like those things should be equal. Like we don't, we forget like, yo, not just a man. Like everybody has a ton of things coming for them that require their time and effort, and we continually play this balancing game of where do I allocate my time in these broader, you know. Sweeping categories.
For sure.
And I don't know if we're playing this balancing game in the sense that we're trying to get them back to like equal, or are we trying to get them to like whatever ranking that makes sense for us. I don't know which one is which. Yeah. My mindset is that most people think about them, they should be equal. Yeah. That don't think about it like with the intentionality that it requires, but I don't know.
I think you might be right. I haven't really done the exercise to like, because I think what ends up happening is it's reflected in your calendar, right? Like your schedule, how you allocate your time is really, you know, the proof is there right on your calendar. So, I mean, I think like most people who work a 9 to 5, the majority of my time is going to be spent focused on work. But outside of work, it's like, I'm really trying to divide up time with daughter, making sure I have the romantic connection with my wife, you know, being spiritual and connecting with my church family and, you know, that aspect of things. I mean, and there's the me time as well, right? So I think it's that balancing act outside of work.
Yeah. All right, we want to wrap this up, and I'd love to end it on these few questions. Why did you get married?
I got married because I was looking for a lifelong companion. I thought that I wanted someone who I could just share life experiences with, and really just have a good time with.
Cool. And you know, when you think about your relationship, what does it mean to you, like, to be a man in a relationship or in a marriage?
Yeah. I think I talked about it a little bit. Just that idea of being a servant leader. And so making sure that my family's needs are taken care of, and really just being that I'm both spiritual as well as kind of, you know, just decision-making type leader in the household.
I know you mentioned the fact that, you know, your wife is currently your best friend. Yeah. At what point did she become your best friend?
I would say it was after our marriage, after we kind of got through our initial rough patch.
So after the counseling and stuff?
Yeah. I think I just gained a much deeper appreciation for her, and, you know, just relied less on my friends who, you know, I grew up with or spent time in college with, to kind of confide in, and we really just became each other's go-to.
No, that's real. I don't ever want this to be like an explicit like dating advice type of podcast or conversation. I do hope that people can learn lessons through the stories that people tell and the lessons that they have learned. But I always ask this question in terms of when you think about advice, and if you had a son, and he's 17 or 21, 23, 25, what kind of advice would you give him?
So luckily, I have a younger brother, 7 years younger than me. So I've had some of these conversations.
I've had practice
with this, but what I told my brother was just to really decide on what the key principles, whatever those deal breakers are for you, and decide on those, and really before things kind of get too deep into a dating relationship with a young lady, evaluate those things, because you may end up in a situation where you're now you got your feelings involved, you're deep in love, and then you realize later on that there's some red flags, and you're like, now you're stuck in a weird situation. So define what you're looking for early on, and make that evaluation before things get too deep.
And the same question, for your daughter, if she's 17, 21, 25, 27.
I think it's the same. I think it's the same advice for her as well. It's I think for my daughter, though, where I would kind of differ a little bit is just ensure that this man is a good decision maker, right? And make sure that you can trust him to make sound decisions when you're not around, that are going to ultimately benefit your family. So,
man, Mick, I don't know if there's another way to end it. This was good. This was real good. I just want to throw you a rose and thank you for being vulnerable with me and our audience. Sharing how you feel as a man, given what's going on in the world today, talking about your relationship, the good, the bad, the ugly, your growth, the growth of your relationship with your wife. Man, I'm just happy that we got a chance to talk about it and unpack some things. I know I learned a lot about it. I hope the listeners have too. This has been great. I'm excited for what's to come. Next week we'll have a new guest. Listeners, I'm your best friend's best friend. So do me a solid. Grab your other friends. Make sure they know about this podcast. Make sure you're sharing it. Make sure they follow at Think Love Wife on Instagram, and that they subscribe to the I Think I Love My Wife podcast on all major platforms. And special request, please make sure that you're letting us know how we could be better, letting us know what you love about the podcast. Leave a written review if you have Apple Podcasts. That really lets me know, and it's another way to really engage with you and let me know, give me the motivation, affirmation to keep going. And until next time, you know what it is. I hope the conversation, say it with me, keeps going.